Welcome to the Women in Product podcast. I'm so excited to welcome Meghna Shah today, and she's our guest coming from PwC. We think about PwC as a consulting organization, but I know coaching is really near and dear to your heart as well as part of the value that can come from that. Can you share a little bit more about what it means to you to become a coach or to be a coach and how that works into your practice?
Absolutely. Thanks, Cassie, and thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited about this. So, Cassie, as you mentioned, I'm a partner at PwC and I'm within the product and innovation group. I've been in consulting for more than 18 years, and my world's always been around designing, building, implementing any sort of technology products for our businesses and our customers. And in this role in consulting, when you're client serving and client facing, you have an opportunity to do two things, not just build technology products for your clients, but also sometimes help them teach them how to build that product management discipline for their organization. So you're not just fishing for them, but you're also teaching them how to fish. And I think that's what's been special about product and consulting.
So I love that analogy, Meghna, you shared, right? Around whether you're fishing for somebody or teaching them how to fish. And I can imagine that potentially a lot of our listeners feel like when you bring in a consulting team, it's like an augmentation and they are really just there to deliver the fish at the end of the day. And so I think it's really neat to hear about this idea of really teaching people how to fish. Can you share a little bit more about how that works its way through the engagement with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have a very famous saying in consulting, which I'm sure you've heard, that every answer can start with "it depends."
Right.
So it does depend a little bit from client to client, right? But for the most part, when you're working with clients on something that's a little bit more of a mindset shift tool, right? How do you be more agile, or how do you deploy, the product management mindset? How do you build and operate differently? I think that just ends up being such a strong element of coaching, right? When you're doing these pieces, because that is, yes, a tangible outcome and value realization that you're targeting, but it's successful when people are going to start looking at this a little bit differently and are start going to think about their day-to-day work differently as well. So that's where we kind of see coaching really become a big part of the work that I do.
I think that's really interesting. And, I think sometimes, I suppose, right, we have different learning styles. So sometimes we can learn through reading a book or listening to a podcast. And sometimes we learn through doing and practicing and building the muscles ourselves. And it would seem to me very logical that, in the process of collaborating with consultants on a large engagement and a major initiative, that's fertile ground for doing some muscle building and learning some of those skills. One of the things that I think might also be interesting, I'd love to hear your perspective on, is this is not necessarily even just specific to, right, the head of product or the CPO, right? Because a lot of what I think consultants can be really great at is helping create influence throughout a broader set of the organization.
Yeah.
Does that come up in your engagements where you're helping, bring influence, and you use a great word, mindset shift, with, other stakeholders in the organization?
Yeah, I mean, 1,000%, right? Because I mean, so much has changed in the past, 5 to 10 years, if you will. Technology is really changed, right, in terms of how businesses perceive technology as part of the organization as well. It's IT is no longer the order taker, right, who's just doing what business is asking them to do, but they're really driving the change and they're more in the driver's seat and telling the businesses of what the end user and the customer wants, right? So that dynamic is shifting. And as a result of that, technology, product, all of these folks have a bigger seat at the table. So a lot of those pieces around how do you then take product, technology, and use that to influence your partners in business, in compliance, in risk, regulatory, legal, right? All of these folks, and how can you bring them along the journey of really becoming a product-centric organization.
Wow. And I imagine you working with a lot of big enterprise clients as well. And possibly some enterprise clients might be thinking, well, I already know how to do all this stuff, right? Like, why should I even be thinking about coaching? I just need somebody to help come do this fishing, right?
Yeah.
What would you say to those people?
You know, it's funny you bring that up because one of the my favorite analogies to use for that is even Michael Jordan has a coach, right? So it's not about coaching is not to help you learn the game or just, get better, right? But apologies, that coaching is about how do you get better and how do you elevate from wherever your starting point is. And it could be that, hey, you just need to learn how product works, or you could be doing it for years and now you really want to unlock that next level of how can it be more integrated and more seamless with the rest of your organization, and how can you use that to drive innovation and more disruptive technologies and lead the market as opposed to being a follower of the trends in the market. So it depends. It really depends on how you want to apply it in your world, right? But I think coaching is less about like a person sitting next to you and telling you what the next step is, and more about helping you explore in the context of building something of what else is possible, what is a better way of doing something, and how do you kind of hone and enhance the things that you're already doing.
I like the Michael Jordan analogy. We had the Olympics not long ago, right? So all the Olympians have coaches. It's about that. I think it's not about whether or not you have the talent. It's about the outside perspective almost, right? Or like Michael Jordan watches video of him and breaks it down and really analyzes it. And so it's pretty powerful to be able to bring somebody that has the exposure to the breadth of situations that you do to help just shine a different light on that.
And Cassie, in my experience, again, I know it that is so different. All our clients are different, and they have different starting points, different problem statements that they have engaged us with. So there could be multiple starting points that we have, but a common theme that I've noticed is when execution and doing something matches with the intent, that's when the magic happens, right? And I'll tell you what I mean by that is, yes, you want to be a product-centric organization, and that is your intent. But just sitting in a room and talking about it is not going to really move the needle. It could, but more likely than not, it doesn't. Where it happens is you pick up a pilot, you pick up a real technology product, and you put your organization, your people, your process, your technology, your data through that ringer. And then you come out of it with either success or lessons learned, right? And then how do you use that to then iterate? And what you're now doing is building that product discipline and that mindset in your organization, but you're doing it through the doing. You're doing it through the delivery. And I think that's how coaching is as well. When we embed ourselves with our clients and we are in this two in a box model, we deliver the product with them and teach them the best practices, the tools, the artifacts as we are building the product with them. That's where we find like the most stickiness with our clients, and where most of the adoption of this new way of working really resonates with them.
That's interesting. And did you say two in a box or tool in the box? And can you
Two in
share
a box. So
what?
it's like it's an industry term we use to show that's yes, ideally you would have like one product manager, but we have two in a box. So one is shadowing and coaching, so that when the time's there, you're kind of, letting them fly and you can step away. So you have this joint accountability of sorts. So you're not out there alone. And then you're also learning and doing as you go.
That's neat. Yeah, I've had this thought sometimes. We talk a lot about pair programming, right? And what
You
about
know
pair
what?
producting?
It's two in a box. It's exactly that. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
And so, what that's a really interesting example. And it started off with this idea that people knew that they wanted to shift to the product operating model, or to being a thinking about product as a strategic arm, not a services arm per se of an organization. Um, and do you find that most of your clients have already come to that realization and that they're coming to you with that mindset? Or sometimes are you working with clients that aren't really conscious of that mindset difference yet and are learning it with you? Because I think that that's a really big part of, you know, a challenge of a product leader is understanding that context and that influence.
Yeah, I mean, this is what makes my job a lot of fun, right, Cassie? Because we try to joke that a big part of our first 2 or 3 weeks on an engagement is helping define the problem statement. It's
Yeah.
very rarely that we have a clean, problem statement that comes to us and we're just answering the exam question. And that's what makes the job fun. That yes, it starts with something. It can start with something, hey, we have a lot of tech debt, right? Or our developers are not moving fast enough. We're taking too long with the product backlog. Our defects are too high. We are not delivering fast enough, right? It could be any of these things that could be the problem statement. And then as we start exploring through many frameworks that we've built over the years, you start exploring that, is this a people problem? Is this asking for a new interaction model, a new way of working? Is it more an operating model design? Is it more governance related? Or do we not have the right tools and artifacts to support what the teams are trying to do? Is it the process is broken, right? Do we not have the data to make timely decisions and drive insights throughout the organization? And that's when we start exploring and seeing where it's at, and then we could lead to the logical conclusion that this is truly a product operating model issue that we're trying to solve, right? That what you're trying to do is be a more product-centric organization, which means anchor your business, your cadences, your people around how efficiently you can roll out your technology products to your end users. And if that's the problem you're trying to solve, then all of these things need to now come to light. And then how you're going to tackle each of them one at a time. So yeah, that's kind of how it usually all comes together.
I mean, right. I love that. Oftentimes in a consulting agreement, right, there'll be a discovery phase. And that just sounds like it's like this discovery phase, which is potentially inclusive of the general problem or a customer problem or a product problem. But then
Yeah.
you have also, let's do some discovery to uncover the root cause of
Yeah.
get here. Like, and if it's a mindset or a skill or a cross-functional collaboration or a sales approach or something, right? What's the root cause of that? I think that's really
Exactly. I think there's a very popular management quotation, which I'm going to butcher right now, but it's to the effect where the hardest thing is figuring out what the problem is. Because once you have defined the problem, the solution is easy. So something like that. I'm sure
yeah.
that person says it a little bit better than I do, but I think that's the piece, that I think nailing down what your problem and the root causes are essentially becomes the biggest part of coaching, right? Because then you just need to know, what to do, and then you do it.
Right, right. Oh, wow. Well, maybe you can walk us through, and of course, anonymized, right? But either a success story or a failure story, even that might help bring this to life for our listeners.
Um, I'll do a success story. Of course, I can't reveal the name of any of our clients, but this was a large financial services organization, and they were looking to roll out this new technology platform for themselves, and they were trying to figure out how to do it, and they are a fairly mature organization in terms of their tech discipline, so they do have like agile disciplines, and they do the sprint cadences. So they have a good handle on how to do the agile way of working once the backlog is defined, right? So that's the delivery cadence they were doing really well. So we were engaged to help them with defining what should this product be building, right? So hey, PwC, come and help us define our requirements backlog so that we have it ready to go, so that then our tech teams can start building it. And as we were working with them, we're like, oh, this is a list of like 130 requirements that you are using to communicate with your business partners, legal, compliance, risk, right? What if we mapped these in the context of a value chain, right? What if we took capabilities and features and started thinking about what is it that you're trying to build and what end user experience is this really going to enable? So
Mhm.
instead of saying you're just building a screen, when the screen is being built, your XYZ consumer is now going to be able to open an account successfully, right? So the capability we are building is account opening as opposed to, just writing down the requirement and later. And it sounds fairly simple, but when you see it in the context of a value chain, you see, 14 capabilities, you see 54 features, and then you start ring fencing around, hey, these are the capabilities that are must-haves. We need to start with it immediately. So this can be an end-to-end flow and we can retire the old system and this license is expiring. So this feature needs to definitely be enabled before August, da da da. But what they're now doing is exercising the Moscow principles and actually prioritizing and building their MVP.
Mhm.
Um, so we kind of then help them define what their MVP should look like. This is what's realistic. And then using that to help the tech team start looking at their backlog and prioritizing the backlog and then start sprinting on those requirements. Um, and I call this a success story because it didn't start as a product operating model engagement, right? It started like, hey, we need two BAs come in and help us write these requirements, right? And how we wrote the requirements, how we framed it, how we presented it and communicated to all the stakeholders involved, it changed the relationship business and risk and compliance because it was a risk product. Risk compliance and business started having with technology, right? And it was less about, hey, tech, build this for us versus, hey, tech, let's talk together of when can we build this, right? Like, what is a better way to do this? Because this is a functionality we want. If there is a better way to do it, let's do it that way, right? And the whole conversation shifted. And then that led to the two in a box, where we were able to even help with the execution piece and be with them two in a box for the product owner, product manager roles, showed them what effective DevOps testing, like went through the whole life cycle. So it's one of the engagements I'm most proud of just because of the journey of how it all happened and how it was so organic and seamless. Um, so yeah, I think I would say that's a
That's a
fun
good
success
story.
story.
I love the two in the box, right? I think that's so powerful.
I know I want to be a two in a box with everything in my life. I'm just like, can I not do anything alone? Yeah, that would be
Right?
great.
Yeah, I do think that's what the power of community is too sometimes, right? If we can lean on our communities to help not be in a box alone. You mentioned BAs, which is, the business analyst, and can you share a little bit more about typically you have like BAs and are they distinct from the product managers versus the product owners, and a little bit more about some of those roles that you have of people that engage with your clients?
Yeah, and I'll speak with my experience. I'm sure there are industry experts who have probably a more scientific definition of these, right? And I'll give you a little bit of context for this, is that when the whole agile wave happened for a lot of our clients, right? And I spend a lot of time with like banking, capital markets, insurance, very financial services focused. When the agile journey started, they wanted to see that how can we take traditional roles which are mapped to a waterfall life cycle and translate them into this new agile, more iterative way of working, right? And product is, in my mind, the next step of the agile journey, right? That when you're doing delivery in an agile format in a more iterative way, where you're thinking about the end user, how can you extend that mindset left as well, and how you're thinking about the product and the requirements and not just delivery, right? So that's a little bit of the context of why the it started with some of these organizations that had BAs and testers and engineers, right? And PMs, right? Like those were the traditional roles. And it was like, hey, BAs map closest to knowing what the backlog needs to look like, and they have a good sense of the product backlog. So they should be the PMs, right? I mean, the product managers. The project managers can become the scrum masters because they really have a handle on like the schedule, the risks and issues. They remove blockers, right? So that's kind of how it started, which is fine. In hindsight, I think we all want to do things differently and better because now we know more. But at that point, it made sense to do it like that. But I think over time, we've realized that these roles are more nuanced, right? And it requires us to upskill our resources and give them more tools, right? And not just do what they were doing under a new title, right? So a lot of that stuff is happening as we speak in the industry now. But um, I think so I would say a BA is someone who it's still pretty fairly used in the industry right now, that term. And to me, I see it as somebody who understands the business requirements or your end user requirements. And I think that's a big product mindset shift, right? That it's no longer business telling me what to do, but who is using this system? The
Mhm.
end user. In this case, it could be the business using the system, but if once we start calling them the end user, it changes how we're interacting with them and how we're taking in their requirements for the product. So that to me is more of the BA. And then the product manager is someone who needs to have that holy trinity, right? Who has a pulse on what the end user is asking for, a pulse on what technology systems we are using, right? And what is the tech behind it, and a little bit eye on innovation and the industry, that where is the industry going? If I'm building a loan origination system, right, do I know where the loans is heading? Who are my competitors, right? Who are the fintechs out there? What are they building, right? So kind of having that holy trinity skill set, if you will. So, and then product owners and scrum masters, they start getting a little bit more specific when you get into delivery. So they're handling a certain subsection of your backlog or feature set, and they are more technically savvy, and they understand how this product is being built, and they're really managing and overseeing the how versus the what. That is
Right.
the product manager's role. Yeah. I
I
know I
feel
said a lot, but yeah.
no, that it's a lot and it was great. And I think the last piece of your Trinity really had to do with what Marty Kagan might call like strategic context, right? And how you're impacting the business outcomes. One term that you used was the value chain. And I would love to hear you expand a little bit on more on that for our listeners. Like, what is that? What's the value chain, and how can we connect that to our understanding of product strategy? You said farther left, right? So I'm imagining like strategy on, I don't know which side on the recording, but the strategy on the left
Yeah.
and then the delivery
Shift
on the
left.
right,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
what does the value chain mean, and how does one apply that concept in their context and in one's context?
Yeah, I mean, we could have a whole episode on value chain for sure, because there's just so much to unpack there, right? But I think I'm trying to see how to maybe be succinct, right? In the next couple of minutes. But I think the way I think about a value chain is you are thinking of, again, product is all about the end user, right? And design thinking. So you're putting the end user in the center of this all. And what is that chain going to look like for this user? Let's take a simple example, like let's say, Amazon, right? And Amazon cards. When a customer logs into the Amazon website or app or whatever, what is their journey going to look like, right? Is it going to be, I'm going to go to the page. I need the ability to search. Then if I'm searching, I need the ability to add to cart. And then I need a checkout function and a payment function, and then an email confirmation that it's on its way, right? Now, this is my value chain. So you, the tech product, instead of being like, oh, I need to build a database, I need a server, I need this engine, I need, I need a payments API, I need, search functionality. Yes, those are all the features you need. But when you put it and you map it in the construct of which end-to-end value chain is it enabling for your end user, it changes your prioritization and sequencing. That this is what I'm trying to enable. So now when you're thinking about search, you're thinking about search in the context of how am I making it easy for my end user to search for the product that they are searching for. So when you come up with the categories of search, is it going to be books, appliances? You're now thinking about it from the context of the end user and the value chain, and not just like, oh, these are the 15 products I have, so I'm going to sort it by these 15 products. Like, no, the customer doesn't care if you sort it by knives and spoons. They want appliances.
Mhm.
Terrible example, but like,
Right.
I think that's kind of what that shift is on a very, very fundamental level, is you're thinking about the value chain. And now you take that to a loan origination system, or you're building some sort of a platform or a card modernization. It could be anything that you're building. Instead of thinking about, um, oh, this person needs to open a savings account, you're starting to think about, oh, what is this account onboarding value chain going to look like, right? At what points of their journey are they interacting with a person in my organization, with a tool in my organization, or some data in my organization? And then when you cut that across the value chain, you kind of have a little bit more robust idea of your capabilities and features that you're trying to build. So it just, yeah.
Yeah, I
Does
think
that
it's
help?
so important. Well, it's so easy to set goals that are about outputs, like, oh, we launched the API, right? To use one of your examples. And rather, when you think about the value chain, I kind of might think about it as a funnel, like your journey map, right? You're really trying to get a customer from point A to point B. And how does that, how can you quantify that? If you have a value chain mindset, you're probably easier to quantify something meaningful.
Exactly. I think, and it becomes less about let's build a product where people can buy things versus now it becomes let's build a product which makes my end user, it takes them 2 clicks to get to checkout. These are
Right.
two very different products. You could
Right.
end up building the same thing, but if that's your problem statement, you're building two very different products. And the second one is what we want to get to, the specificity and that hyper focus on your end user of, oh, they care about 2 clicks. They don't want to spend 10 hours searching for the perfect product. They want to be told what the perfect product is and hit checkout, right? So now you're building two very different technology products.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Okay, great. I'd love to ask a question a little bit more around, right, I'm sure you have clients and engagements where you see the lasting impact of the coaching. Not only did you deliver fish, but the team now knows how to fish better. What are some of the characteristics either of that product team and or even of the cross-functional stakeholder team that really lend themselves to that kind of an outcome? Because some clients probably just they get the fish and then they're back to whatever skill level they had before. And I think it's important for us to embody whatever those characteristics are.
Wow, that's a great question. Trying to think. I mean, it'll sound cliche, but of course, a learning mindset is very important for the folks who are showing up because their management has asked them to show up to this versus folks who genuinely want to do it differently. I think obviously that it makes a lot of difference in terms of the stickiness and the adoption. Um, I think going back to the Michael Jordan example, right, is this journey is never going to end. So I think having that mindset as well, that you're getting the tools to stay current and up to date, but it's going to change. Like ChatGPT is here, like now the rules are a little bit different in terms of, even the emerging technology that's available to you, and not just how you can do product management using the tools differently, but also the product you're building is continuously changing. Your competitor landscape is continuously changing. So um, I think having that mind share and that mindset is, I think, very, very important that you need that piece. And I think this final thing that I would say is I think our stakeholders who have seen themselves as part of a broader organization strategy have been more successful. It's not just about making technology stronger or just one aspect of your organization stronger. This whole thing needs to come together, right? And folks who understand that and then start building those relationships and those communication pipes across the different business units. And I keep saying legal, risk, compliance, because they're so important when you're thinking about an organization. You can't launch a product without any of these, right? So, how do you think of this as in a more holistic way? I think that's when, again, there are more stakeholders involved, and then there are more people who have skin in the game, and then you're more motivated to keep going and keep doing better as opposed to just keeping it to your silo. So I would say those three things would be where I've seen the most clients get the bang for their buck, right? That it's not a one-time investment, but you're really fundamentally shifting kind of how you operate and how you go to market.
Wow, that's really powerful. I love this idea of seeing yourself not just as this insular product development technology team, but really you're part of the bigger group and collaborating cross-functionally with all these other leaders in order to affect the business outcomes that you're looking for.
And sometimes that's the biggest coaching, right? That an element of coaching, because the way technology is, right? It is code, right? And either your code works or it doesn't work, right? The proof is in the pudding. So how do you now take some of those skills, but then also upskill the resources that are engineers, product managers to also be able to tell their story, right? Tell and talk to the other stakeholders around why certain choices were made, why they're doing what they're doing, and bringing the rest of the organization along as well. So the storytelling becomes a big part of what we end up working and coaching our clients on as well, of how can you tell that story and build consensus and build momentum. So yeah, that's definitely a big part of coaching.
I love that. I'm thinking of the two in the box, and then I'm picturing also just a really big box that everybody's together, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And we're not silos throwing things over to distant teams, but working towards things together. That's a really great way to end the conversation, I think, Meghna. Thank you so much for your time today and sharing your perspective. We really appreciate it, and we appreciate your support for women in product.
Absolutely. Thank you again for having me. This was so much fun.
Thank you. Bye.
Hopefully Michael Jordan calls us now. Yeah.
Right. Yes.
Awesome.
Take care.
This podcast is an original production of Women in Product. Follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or the Women in Product YouTube channel. Leave us a review so that others can discover us, or share this episode with someone you know. Original music provided by Jimmy Hahn. Thanks for joining.